Greetings to everyone who's in the building tonight. It's a late one tonight and it's been a while, so forgive me for the absence, I guess. Okay. Salute to everyone in the building. I'm going to jump straight into it. Um, as we all know, in the UK, it's officially Black History Month. So in the UK, October is Black History Month. So, our American cousins understand what entails in that month. There is a greater awareness and observations of so-called Black culture during the month. Okay. And this is what sparks this topic that I want to briefly kind of convene with you guys about. Excuse me. Um, the question: whose job is it to teach Black people Black history? And I know this is a quite contentious topic because I know you're going to get a lot of Black folk saying things like, "Oh, they don't teach us Black history at school." You know, they're trying to hold back this information because they know this, that, and the other. Right? You've got that group, and you've also got the opposition. You've got the non-Black folk who are making statements like, "Well, okay, you guys get Black History Month. What about Chinese History Month? What about Indian History Month?" Right? So quite contentious, you know. But the thing is that every year, Black History Month occurs, and every year the same questions are asked. Right? I've made previous videos on what I feel about Black History Month. A lot of you don't like it, and that's cool. I understand that. A lot of people. I'm not even trying to frown on any opposition in terms of opposing thoughts. I just think that fair enough. Okay. But what I want to ask in this stream, and what I've always asked when I've always made a video about Black History Month, okay, is does Black History Month hold any value? And if so, what is that value? Okay. So I'm intertwining this whole discussion on Black history with Black History Month. Okay. Or is it purely of sentimental, feel good value for Black people to have a month like this? And again, I say this with respect to Black Americans because this is where this month stemmed from. Okay. We have a different demography, different histories, right? So this is purely talking to Black British people. Okay. People of direct African Caribbean lineage mostly. Okay. So Black Americans is a different thing. So, I see some Black Americans in the chat. I'm going to come to the chat in a sec. But this is not aimed at you. This is aimed at us. Okay. And it's a worthy discussion. Does it hold any weight? Right? Does it have any effect on the harsh realities of being a Black Brit? The harsh realities that we often see in certain statistics. In fact, I might just bring it up. In the meantime, yes, please, if you can get the likes up, that would be good. More people will be involved and come in. I know it's late and I know it's off cusp. I know I didn't plan this. I'm trying to steadily get back into a routine, so bear with me. Like the video, subscribe if you're new, comment your thoughts in the chat, in the comments below. All that good stuff is all good. And of course, I got the link in the chat pinned to the top of the chat. So if you want to chime in towards the end of the stream or the end of my spiel, feel free to. Okay. So the stats, I wanted to go through stats. I tried to pull up a few things. I'm trying not to rely on the type of show and tell statistics. Statistics can easily be debunked, right? But does a Black History Month have any effect on the stats that we know all too well that are usually in a negative favor when it comes to Black people in the UK, such as the percentage of graduates per ethnic group, and what different degrees do they get after studying in university? Okay, one very problematic statistic you know, based on these stats, and, you know, yes, they are government stats, but we should all bring in critical thinking. According to these stats, Black people are the lowest when it comes to getting a first-class degree. In what way does a Black History Month positively affect this statistic? Next up, what do we have next? Home ownership. Okay. Surveying English people and showing the percentage of households that are owned by their own home by ethnicity. Okay. So as you can see on the screen, you know, it often is the case that in these statistics, Black people fare on the lower end. Right. To be fair, in this stat, Black Caribbeans don't seem to be doing too bad when it comes to home ownership. It might make sense with the generation that came over Windrush and the Black businesses that I think a lot of Black Caribbeans pioneered, the barbershops, you know, the restaurants. But it's still a fairly grim statistic, right? Lower in the home ownership in the country. What else do we have? Reoffending crime, okay? Percentage of offenders who reoffended by ethnicity. As the sky is blue, the Black group are highest when it comes to reoffending. Like I say, yes, stats can, you know, there's a lot that can go in, or there's a lot that is removed from statistics. So overly relying on stats is not the thing, right? But my early simpleton question is, how does the Black History Month positively affect these harsh realities, right? And again, I'm asking the question, is it a meaningful awareness of Black History Month, or is it something that is more in line with sentimental value, right? Now, the main reason, I'm going to come to the chat in a second. I see people showing love and support. I really appreciate you. I'm going to come in a sec. I just want to kind of streamline this part because I know I get long-winded. You know, I just want to streamline this part. But the reason why I wanted to make this video is because Lenny Henry, a famous British comedian, Black British comedian, he said something which ruffled some feathers when it comes to people that lean into the right? He said, he said, let's see, where are we? Basically, he was suggesting that Black history be taught everyone, every day of it. Right? Awareness of history should be discussed, taught every day. Okay, I won't find it because it's one reading in a showcase for it. Let's see, where is it? Bear with me for a second. Let me just put it here. Okay, here we go. 1 second. Let me just pull it up. Forgive the tardiness. So this is what he said. Okay, we're going to run through this ad. That's cool. Let me just play it. Salute to everyone in the building. Let me just share the screen anyway. Where are we? 1 sec. God damn, man. It's been a while, man. I'm fumbling over the keys and stuff. Let's see. What is this guy saying? Let's see if we can get some sound on this.
Black History Month is great for kids in school in this country. You know, it's a ring space where they absolutely.
Firstly, can you guys hear it? Can you hear him all right?
Kids are Black all year round, so they need to have a sense of what's been going on, running as a seam all the way through their education, not just 1 month a year. That's what I think.
Yeah, and especially the Windrush generation, like it really is a shared history, like everyone's life.
Okay, salute, Marathon, he says volume is too low. Okay, let me try again, forgive me.
Is great for kids in school in this country. They, you know, it's a ring space where they absolutely have to focus on all of these things, but I'm Black all year round, you know. My kids are all black all year round, so they need to have a sense of what's been going on, running as a seam all the way through their education, not just 1 month a year. That's what I think.
Yeah, and especially the Windrush generation, like it really is a shared history. Like everyone's lives changed. You know, everyone was exposed to new food, new music, new culture, new way of being. Not just people who came, but people who were already here.
Yeah.
So the whole of the UK changed. So I do really feel like it is a collective story.
Everybody has contributed to this country and making it what it is. Favorite dish in Britain: chicken tikka masala.
Yeah.
Second favorite: curry water rice.
Yeah.
Third favorite: kebabs. Come on.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that migration hasn't contributed to this country. Fashion, style, culture, music. And this is, for me, Three Little Birds is the beginning, because we're in 957. You haven't even got to bap, bap, my boy, lollipop. You haven't got to that yet. So when that happens, oh my days, you're going to see some stuff.
It's funny, man, because I know straight away. Oh, salute to the Nintendo Switch. I know straight away that when people hear that, they're going to say, basically people lean on the right, they're going to say, you mean curry goat is the only thing that your civilization has influenced the UK population with, right? So basically Lenny Henry's saying teach black history every day. You know, he's got black kids. I think technically they're mixed, but okay. But my simple question, again, to follow up from the earlier one, is who's really responsible for that? You know, who's really responsible for teaching black people black history? And what I mean is that, you know, obviously we are a small demographic amongst people who have a well-documented history, right? Very proud history, goes back a millennia, you know. How can we flip this? For example, I wonder how, you know, the average Nigerian feel if they had a population that is about, I don't know, 3 to 4%, say Chinese people, and there was this clamor and call for more representation when it comes to teaching Chinese history. Obviously, it's not going to be a one-to-one comparison, but I mean, that is the mindset, or that is the opposing view that a lot of people throw out there. You know, I need to really interact with the chat, man. Salute to everyone, man. I can't just monologue. Marathon continues in the building. He says, we are responsible. Black history is key, but Black History Month is an effective way to spread it. And salute to Marathon continues with the $2.99 Australian dollars, man. I really appreciate it, bro. Good to have you here. Always showing love in the city. He says, important topic. Absolutely. Really appreciate your support always. Where is my gun salute for ya? Sorry, man. The gun's a little rusty. It's a bit slow, but salute to you, Marathon. Good to see you in the building. Good to see everyone in the building. I'm going to come to you in the chat, I promise. I just want to kind of, while it's on my mind, man, I just need to really spit it. You know? Like, for example, I remember it must be in year 5. And I'm digressing a little bit, but it's going to come around. I remember when I was in year 5 learning about Christopher Columbus, and we all know about Christopher Columbus, apparently the first person to discover the Americas, right? I remember in year 5 we were going to do a play, you know, a play in front of assembly that you tend to do after studying something. You tend to showcase it in a play, right, in front of the school. We were doing one about Christopher Columbus and how he was sailing across the Atlantic to meet the indigenous Americans, right? And I had a black teacher. And I remember when it came to portraying the Caribbeans, the native Caribbeans, when Christopher Columbus touched down, right? Knowing the history, or, you know, the future history of what happened, my black teacher was very nervous with how the Caribbean peoples were represented, right? I remember that look. That was year 5, so I was like 9, 10, but I still remember the look in her face. You know, shout out to Miss Herbert. She was nervous anxious with the way Caribbean people were represented, because although we were taught about Christopher Columbus, we wasn't taught about the slave trade, right? And that's why now, now I look back, I understand why she had this nervous thing. I didn't understand it back then. And I say that to say, maybe, just maybe, a good chunk of Black history within at least the last millennium, maybe it's all just too brutal. This is one of those harsh realities that we might have to approach. Maybe a good chunk of Black history within the last 1,000 years is just too brutal to teach. And I'm speaking about in a school setting, right? Because I don't really know the effects telling kids that are 8, 9, 10, 11 that they most likely, they most like their lineage, their ancestors were most likely servants, right? I don't currently know what effects that will have on the psyche of kids to learn that and to see videos, maybe watch Roots. Maybe it's too brutal. And I'm going to give you an example of a brutal history that I just read this morning. Just randomly this morning, I woke up early in the morning, doing my red light therapy, reading some history. Brutal. So that could be another thing. But I believe, and that's why I put my name in the corner as I did, because I know how some of you think very in a very simpleton way. If I don't say what you want me to say, then yes, I am something else, right? That's the folly of Black people and the mentalities that are out there. But I generally believe the UK can only do so much with regards to teaching, quote unquote, Black history every day. Again, a small demographic, you have your own people to cater to, their own history, that goes way, way back, that is very well documented because, back to the Roman days and beyond. How much more history can they squeeze in to teach? Press 1 if you understand what I mean. I want to show you something as well. I'm going to come to the chat in a sec. But again, salute to everyone in the building, man. I really appreciate having the old crew around. Good to see everyone. I'm going to come to the chat in a sec. Let me share this with you. It was a syllabus from the government website about an exemplar of how they could teach Black history in schools, okay? Let me just bring it up. Where are we? Window. Okay. So I've got that up. But first of all, man, yeah, I see the one. Salute to MJA in the building. Good to see you, sir. Good to see you. I see brother Diego Ife, aka Diego Herringbill. Good to see you, sir, man. Greetings. I see the marathon continues again. Salute. Ephraim Mackworth, salute. And again, I am open to opposition, man. That's why I put in the call-in link. Anyone can disagree and discuss their own thoughts. I don't know everything. I hate to seem like I am trying to teach anything or school anyone, because I'm not. I'm as naive and ignorant as you guys. JM Talks in the building with the Badger. Salute. And I see more love, man. TM in the building, man, with the 199. Hey, bro, I really appreciate that. I appreciate TM. TM, me and brother TM, we sometimes go back and forth when we talk about certain things in the city, but we always seem to resolve it. And I really appreciate you. You always, you like, you don't take it to heart and stuff like that, disagreements and stuff. So I really appreciate you, bro. Good to have you in the building. I really appreciate your support. With the 199, salute to you. And we got MJA 2873 in the building as well, always coming through. Our American brother, $2 super chat. He says, excellent topic. Looking forward to it. I appreciate it, man. Really appreciate all your support. Really appreciate you coming through. It's good to see all the old faces coming through as well, man. And look, this will be a good topic because I'm also going to throw in a curveball here that you might not anticipate. Okay, towards the end of my little spiel, which I'm not going to lay before you too long because I want to hopefully get people to come on and talk about what they think about this whole, we need to teach Black history every day, But I really appreciate everyone showing love. Please do like the stream so we can get more people involved. It will open up the floodgates for more people to be active in the stream. I appreciate that it's late and it's midweek and it's short notice. I should be canned up and everything, but I just had to use this for batting practice, man, because the longer you go away from streaming, the less kind of functional or you don't take to it as cleanly as when you're in a doing a consistent thing. But salute to everyone in the building. So I want to show you this, right? This is from the government website. It basically advises, or I think it's used to advise some teachers on how they can approach teaching Black history in schools. Okay, so I'll give you a brief summary of this article. We want all pupils to benefit from a high quality and diverse history curriculum, which is why we are developing a model history curriculum for publication to be published 2024. The department established an expert panel earlier this year to take this work forward. So although Black History Month only happens once a year, the teaching of Black history doesn't begin and end there. The curriculum supports children learning about it all year round. Okay. Here we look at a number of ways that Black history can be taught in schools using the national curriculum for history from Key Stage 1 to 3, and the subject content requirements for history GCSE at Key Stage 4. Okay, so these are an exemplar of what teachers can do. Okay, so at Key Stage 1, the curriculum requires key historical events within or beyond living memory to be taught. This could include teaching about the lives of key Black historical figures such as Mary Seacole and Rosa Parks, both of whom are used as examples in the programs of study. Okay, so people in a not too distant past, who were very exemplary when it came to Black rights, civil rights, right? The interconnection that these islands had with the wider world is an important aspect of teaching in Key Stage 2 and 3. Additionally, at Key Stage 2, the curriculum requires a study of a non-European society that provides contrasts with British history. For example, Benin, West Africa from 1900 to 1300 AD, right? So they are talking about non-European cultures that might have even rivaled Britain at some point. So as if to, allow for an equal footing when it comes to discussing other people's cultures and, a sense of equality and not superiority. Even though, for example, Benin Kingdom was absolutely subjugated by the British Empire, they still want to give them their props, And again, keep in mind, this is coming from a government this is the government website. Okay. At Key Stage 3, there is a statutory requirement to explore ideas, political power, industry, and empire in Britain between 1745 and 1901. This is so that every child has an understanding of the history of empire and its consequences. Teachers could, for example, look at Britain's transatlantic slave trade, its effects, and its eventual abolition, including the successful slave-led rebellions such as the Haitian Revolution that eventually led to the abolition of slavery. So this sounds like being quite open to the ills of the British Empire, right? And yes, a lot of that is going to cause or showcase, a lot of guilt, a lot of shame with what the British did, right? So I say that to say that sounds, like an attempt to, to be reasonable when it comes to discussing history or Black history. In the UK, this could include the role played by slaves and former slaves such as Olaudah Equiano, as well as the Somerset ruling. This key stage also requires the study of an aspect of British history that consolidates and extends pupils' chronological knowledge from before 1066. One of the suggested topics is to look at the impact of migration of people to, from, and within the British Isles. Okay. And then at key stage 4, people should develop and extend their knowledge and understanding of specified key events, periods, and societies in local British and wider world history, which takes in the wide diversity of human experience. Okay, and it continues, there is scope to teach Black history within these events and within the broader requirements of the GCSE subject specification. You know, I'm not a teacher, I'm far from a teacher. I'm not involved in any way in the fields of education. But when I found this looked to me like, and I think, to be fair, this is typical Britain, modern Britain, in the sense that Britain is open to discussing these things. I know many people feel differently about it, but we can go to so many countries, man. So many countries out there will not give you the time of day. You know, you want to go to Saudi Arabia and talk about Black history with what happened there over the millennia. You know, so yeah, you might want to, you know, some people are going to call me a badger, whatever, you know, but this mentality is why I tend to want to rate Britain versus most other countries. At least they're trying, right? And it goes back to what I'm saying. There's only so much that the UK can do. And it goes back to the question again, whose job is it to teach Black people Black history? Okay, let me see what you're saying in the chat. I know I'm rambling, man. I try to avoid rambling, but I just need to get stuff off while it's there in my head, man. Online account says, question is also, how are you going to teach Black History Month somewhere in Derby in a class of all white English kids? Yeah, that's true. And that's going to coincide with my later point, okay? Because I'm going to answer this question myself, in my opinion. And again, I posted the chat link if you want to join in after that point. Say your thoughts. Manchester Blue in the building says there are more Asians in the UK. I think it's around 10% compared to 3% Black people. Why don't Asians have Asian History Month? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Don't arouse the crowd now. Don't arouse the mob. Asking logical questions like that. Uh-oh. Diego in the building, he says, you're right, Falcon. Britain is a lot more liberal about Black history than many states in the US. Take Texas, for example, for instance, which prohibited critical race theory. And to think that a lot of the inspiration that, you know, this country and many European countries get when it comes to these issues, it's coming from America, right? We, in many regards, think of America as leading the charge when it comes to or trying to absolve race relations in some way, right? I think Britain does a fair bit, to be fair. Now, this morning, man, I woke up. What time did I wake up at? I woke up at 5, 8. Nah, not today, not today. Today was one of those days. It was rainy outside. I was lazy, staggering, probably up by 6. Put on my little red light therapy lamp. I'm going to do more videos about that and its effects, okay? Then I decided to be in bed for a bit and just read for a longer amount of time, right? And I was reading this. Okay, look, guys, this is story time, okay? But we have to read this. I have to get through this. I know there's no music, and I appreciate your attention spans and everything, but I really need to read this, man. It's something that we need to learn or understand. I think a lot of us know this, but it's something that I just want to recite. Okay, I was up this morning, read a bit of so-called Black history, and this is the history that I'm talking about. Let me bring it up. Some of you might not know this. Okay, salute to people who know this. I'm not going to go through the whole article, and it's just Wikipedia. But again, it's kind of going to the whole aspect of brutal, you know, a lot of Black history just being brutal. You know, and this is case in point, okay? This is the Black Guard, or Abid al-Bukhari, which literally translates as the slaves of al-Bukhari, okay? The Black Guard were a slave army. Okay, they were a corps of Black African slaves and slave soldiers assembled by the Alawi Sultan of Morocco, Ismail ibn Sharif. Okay, this is from 1672 to 1727. Okay, they were called the slaves of Bukhari. Okay, this military corps, which was loyal only to the Sultan, was one of the pillars of Ismail's power as he sought to establish a more stable and more absolute authority over Morocco. Okay, so Black Guard. So basically, a corps, a military order of solely Black African people in Morocco. Okay, and Morocco is one of those countries where we like to talk about the Moors. You know, the Moors, everyone likes to characterize as a wholly Black African, like their federation, or, you know, that went into Europe and taught Europeans how to, you know, cleanse, sterilize, bath, alchemy, civilization. You know, this is Morocco, okay? And I really want to read a key part because, again, it goes in line with the brutal history that unfortunately seems to affect a lot of the Black history, okay? Let's see, so segments. While Black Africans lived in the region long before Ishmael's reign, a long-term consequence of his policies, which was to use this Black Guard, was the introduction and eventual dispersal of a substantial new Black population in Morocco, okay? The Black Guard descended from Black captives brought to Morocco from West Africa, who were settled with their families in special colonies at Mashra al-Raml to have children and to work as indentured servants. Okay, nothing new there. You know, back in the day, that's, I guess, how it was. Slaves. At age 10, children began to be trained in certain skills, the girls in domestic life or entertainments, and boys in masonry, archery, horsemanship, and musketry. At the age of 16, the boys who passed their training were enlisted into the army. Okay, they would marry, have children, and continue the cycle that is to breed Black soldiers for this sultan. Considered more loyal than the local Arabs or Berbers because of their lack of tribal affiliation, Ishmael's Black soldiers formed the bulk of his standing army and numbered 150,000 at their peak. Okay, so a very loyal Black army in Morocco. But a key part that I remember reading, man, let me quickly find it. Okay, so it speaks about Ismail's reign. I'm not going to belabor for you too long, okay? This is the key part. Ishmael, or Moulay Ishmael, ruled as Sultan for 55 years between 1672 and 1727, one of the longest reigns in Moroccan history. Ruling from a new capital at Meknes, he distinguished himself as a ruler who wished to establish a unified Moroccan state as the absolute authority in the land, independent of any particular group within Morocco. In contrast to previous dynasties, which relied on certain tribes or regions as the base of their power. So that's why they needed the Black Guard, right? He succeeded in part by creating a new army composed of slaves whose loyalty would be to him alone. In 1699, this is the key part, okay? This is the key part. In 1699, he gave orders to enslave all Black Africans in Morocco, right? So, you know, there's slavery, right? But you always get free Black, you know, free men and bonded men, right? But in 1699, this Sultan gave orders to enslave all Black Africans in Morocco, even those who were born free or who were Muslim, right? That's a very key point because that goes against, actually, they're going to read it now. And consequently, my bad, he violated two of the central tenets of Islamic law concerning slavery. Absolutely. You're apparently not allowed to enslave other Muslims. But they did it anyway. Right? Moroccan registers show that Ishmael enslaved over 221,000 Black Moroccans between 1699 and 1705. In a study of these events, scholar Shuki El Hamel argues that Ishmael's efforts to justify these actions generated a potent new form of racist discourse in the region that associated Black Africans with slavery. Okay, these are one of those key moments. The idea of a professional army composed of slaves who were loyal only to the Sultan was inspired by the historical presidents of other Middle Eastern and North African military bodies recruited from slaves. Yeah, and they refer to the Ottoman Empire. What were they called? The Mamluks, I think. They were slaves and they became basically an empire. Don't call me on that though. But yeah, man, this is, again, if you want to read this to young kids, I'm not quite sure what effects this will have on their psyche, right? They got, can you imagine, man? You're just a humble whatever in Morocco in 16 whatever, and then all of a sudden, orders were given, all of you are going to be slaves. I mean, this is part of Black history, and like Online on Account says in the chat, things like this is why there is a lingering racist attitude in certain cultures, nations, right? Similar kind of thing happens in neighboring country, Mauritania. So it goes back to, is the so-called Black, is it just brutal to talk in a way that is like, it's a very candid way. This is what you guys are saying in the chat. I think this is quite important, man. This is important. Keep in the building, it says, what's not coming up? Are we freezing out here? It's not coming up. First market building is multiple malls were built with the Black minority. Yeah. CBC Boxing says the malls were also Black, not Arab. I guess the question is, who were the leadership? Who was in control of making these laws? In this situation, they've got one sultan who, some of you are saying half Berber, half Black, whatever, but then he's surrounded by, a crew that looks just like me with a hapif or whatever they call that cap. Damn, is the sound, do you say the sound muffled? Man, my bad. Is it good now? Is it good now? Press 1 if the sound is good now. I don't know why it's acting up. I'm well connected. Got the Chris Falcon connection. Please hit a 1 if the sound is good. But I'm going to move on. Okay, appreciate that. Apologies. So what is the answer, man? Whose job is it to teach Black history? Whose job is it to teach Black history? I need to just go into a skit right now because it's kind of funny when you think about it.
The government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, the government. The government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, the government. The government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, the government. The government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, the government. Run to you niggas, run, run to you niggas, run to you niggas, run, run to you niggas. The government, it's the government.
No, I don't believe it's the government. It's not the government's job to teach Black history in a country like the UK, right? I think that makes common sense, right? It's not the government's job, and I think they are doing what they can to to make amends. I see someone in the back, man. I appreciate you for waiting this time. I'm going to bring you up in a sec. Whose job is it though? It's the family's job, right? It's the family's job. It's the parents' job to relay their culture and to teach their history to their kids. This is what I'm realizing. And I think if you've been around my community tab, you might have sensed, you know, the ambience of where I'm going with this. It's something that I've known, but it's something that I'm realizing more and more and more. And look, disclaimer, if you got soft feelings, you know, if you don't like hard-hitting truths, then you need to switch off now. But the problem is that the Black family is absolutely atrocious. The Black family is atrocious. You know, and I'm saying this with an African bias, but I'm pretty sure it's true with the Caribbeans as well. Because it's the same outcomes. It's the same outcomes. And it's this, like, I was planning a few series, like I said in my community tab, I was planning a series of videos that targets this, that challenges this. And there's just so many topics that can be discussed. It's like so many things to talk about. But what I've realized is that, you know, whether it's crime, murder, underachieving in life, it stems from the parents, the Black family, right? And I'm gonna go deeper into that. Like, how, like, man, you create children, right, in a foreign land without really giving to them or bestowing upon them the tools to even strive, to just be okay. And the part of striving is having a healthy self-esteem. And for me, that self-esteem is linked with, you know, some degree of pride in your culture, where you kind of came from. But it's the parents' job to install this into their kids. But the reality is, how can most of us be proud of these origins when in many cases, a lot of our parents use quote unquote back home as punishment? You know what I mean? Oh, if you do something bad, if you do this and that, if you don't get these grades, we're going to send you back to Nigeria or Ghana or wherever. You know, many Black parents say this, or Jamaica. You know, you go back to yard if you act bad. Many parents say this, and consequently, that dims that type of pride that we're supposed to have. Right? Using your own homeland as punishment. So you're basically saying that, yeah, back home is trash. You know? You know what's funny? You know what I've realized? I've realized that Africans, for example, barely know their own history, like en masse. Africans barely know their own history. You know, when I was in my Hotep phase, when I was a teenager, man, I was, you know, very conscious, reading about Kemet and everything else. I remember my bedroom back then, man, had all the posters of the Benin bronzes, all of that. I believe a lot of us go through that phase at some point. But, you know, I would speak to some people that were born in Africa, you know, expecting to engage with them about this history, expecting them to be knee deep in the history and knowing exactly what I'm talking about. But it was like talking to a caveman in many instances. Even many parents don't have a clue. Even they are not read on their own history. You know? Their own ignorance is brought down on a lot of their children. But it's like, in many cases, their children are tasked with manifesting this pride that they weren't even given to begin with. You know, it's a doozy, man. And with this realization, I'm beginning to realize, man, a lot of us were raised by straight narcissists. Let me just be clear. A lot of us were raised by narcissists. You know, a lot of Black parents are just straight narcissists. And the sad thing is, it will be hard to even get this diagnosed, because a lot of Black parents don't even think or are aware of mental health. You know, a lot of Black parents are struggling with depression, and they don't know how to offset it. They don't know what to do. You know, and they have kids in that state, and then what are the odds that you will do well in this life when you come from those origins? You know, a lot of our parents don't really care about you and your future. You know, these are the types of parents that say, oh, I did everything I could, I did my best. But when you think back, when you really analyze and review, think back, and you realize, no, a lot of them just did the bare minimum. You know, funny enough, playing that government is the government fed a lot of us. You know, the school dinners, it was the government. You know, so yeah, it's a rabbit hole, right? It's a rabbit hole. I think the signs are very telling. You know, and I know it seems like I'm digressing from the main point, but it is all encompassing. The lack of being taught your vital history is a part of what I'm denoting as a atrocious Black family and Black parents. You know, you got people who will physically attack you for having an opinion. You know, where other kids are rewarded for thinking outside of the box, a lot of Black kids are abused for it. And then you wonder why a lot of Black men particularly are how can I say it, you know, withdrawn. They don't want to take to leadership positions, coy. You know, parents who will guilt trip, blackmail. Oh, you make a little bit of money, you somehow came up. Oh, where's my cut? A large degree of African parents never even told their kids that, oh, I love you, my daughter. I love you, my son. You know, come here, I love you. And then, you know, the whole nation, all these statistics, all these figureheads wonder why it's the Black kids doing these murders. It's the Black kids that are depressed. You know, the Black kids that are lethargic and feel like they have no purpose. Struggling in a climate. Yeah, we're struggling because we're up against people who had a significantly healthier upbringing, man. This is why a lot of us have relationship issues. You know, we never talk about the Black parents because it's taboo, and we find all these other excuses, and you know, but this is why a lot of people have relationship issues, a lot of trust issues, a lot of abandonment issues. I know these sound like buzzwords that, you know, always therapy buzzwords, but no, when you actually read into it, look into it, it aligns, it makes sense. How can you trust anyone when you couldn't really even trust your own parents to begin with? Search your feelings, you know it to be true. You know, a lot of us are doomed to fail. And you know, the odd Black person that quotes unquote makes it in life, I believe they did so with significant sacrifices, man, whether it be to their mental health, physical health, you know, had to lock off entire family members to reach that pinnacle. I know this topic is taboo for a lot of you, man. I know. I know. That's why I hold back from talking about it, man. It's like, yeah, I know how a lot of you are locked in with that kind of Stockholm syndrome. You can never analyze this and look at your parents, particularly your own mothers, in this way. But if you have the courage and strength to do that, you might realize a few things, man. Actually, I mean, we're almost in an hour. Anyone who's in the back, I'm gonna bring them up. But I want to play this video, man. I just want to do a semi reaction. It's not gonna be a long one. but it's this cool YouTube channel that I've done a response video to a few videos back. And I just want you to see if you relate. It's going to be a quick one. It won't take too long. Let me bring it back up. Let's see. Signs you were raised by narcissist parents. Okay. Let's see if you agree, if this aligns with any of your upbringing. Okay. Quick one.
Parents can be some of the most influential people in one's life. However, it's a whole new ballgame if one or both of your parents happen to be narcissistic. Because then it's all about the narcissist. Instead of teaching you, it's more like forcing their beliefs on you. And when you don't agree, they may belittle you, causing you to believe pretty awfully untrue things about yourself. Let's chat about 7 beliefs that you may have if you were raised by narcissistic parents. Number 1, I'm not good enough. In 2018, a study on narcissistic parenting was conducted with 198 participants. Of those 198, 106 believed one or both of their parents to be narcissistic. Also, these 106 participants had significantly higher scores relating to depression and lower scores related to self-esteem than the other 92 participants. What does this mean for you? Narcissism in parents can lead to children displaying signs of depression or depression paired with low self-esteem.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said, lot of the depression came from not having the ability to offset emotionally with your primary caregivers.
So it is possible that such diagnoses can be the result of narcissistic parenting. Number 2, if I don't have your approval, I'm wrong. With a narcissist, whatever they do and however they do it is the correct and best way to do that thing. If Ariel were a narcissist parent, she'd insist everyone who brushes their hair with anything but a dinglehopper is wrong. When a parent is narcissistic, and they see you doing, saying, or even believing something different than they do, kind of like with boundaries, the narcissist will do or say anything to get you to abandon your way of doing things. The narcissist likes to make you into almost an extension of them. No separation.
Speaking about boundaries, man, who ever had parents that would just like rush into their room, like just not even consider your kind of presence or that like you're doing something or your privacy, that's part of the lack of healthy boundaries, man. That type of stuff. Just walk into your room, no consideration. You're like, who are you?
And when you're just using alternative ways of doing or living, to them, you're telling them they're wrong. A narcissist can't handle this made-up feeling of rejection, so they place that wrongness on you. Number 3, I am everyone's caretaker. When a parent is narcissistic, it's their world. We're just lucky to live in it. That need to be the center of attention reverses the typical parent-child role. This results in the child becoming a caretaker, and tending to the parent and their emotions like a parent should. Author and PhD, Marjalis Fjellstad, states in her book, Stop Caretaking the Borderline or Narcissist, How to End the Drama and Get On With Life, that you may recognize this person in your friend group as the mom or dad of the group. They're driven by the belief that they need to care for everyone around and make everything okay. This can be the result of a narcissistic parent ignoring you and tending to themselves or forcing you to parent them. Number 4.
I think that's, there's a lot of truth in that. Like, again, with money, I'm sure many African parents are out there with the attitude that, hey, because I raised you, I am entitled to a cut of your payment, of your finances, your paycheck, because I held you for all these months or whatever guilt trip they'll use. I am entitled to that. Don't worry about what I've got. You are supposed to give me what you've got.
To be more than I am. A narcissistic parent puts value on you for what you do rather than who you are. They may praise you and how you get all A's in class to other parents. But when you look closely, they're not saying how proud they are of your intelligence. They're saying they're proud of you for performing well and making them look good. This belief that you're only good when doing or accomplishing is ingrained in the child early on. So as you grow older, this belief that you're valued only for your accomplishments turns into perfectionism. This can lead to an unhealthy attachment style in future romantic relationships. But the truth is, you're not loved for what you do. You're loved for who you are. Number 5.
I think that's a big one in African households as well, especially with comparisons with other kids, right? And trying to keep up with the Joneses in the sense that you're always showing off. Oh yeah, my kids are they're in America studying, oh, they're doing this, and like very big in African households.
My priorities make me selfish. Everyone else is more important than yourself. Period. This is what a narcissistic parent makes a child believe in. They don't allow for boundaries to be established. Boundaries are important, and they're healthy. However, if they do not benefit the narcissistic parent, they will do whatever they can to either get you to drop that boundary, or they might ignore it altogether. Fjellstad makes a point in her book that narcissistic parents view their children as an extension of themselves. A boundary or personal priority forces the parent to see that you're two different people. To get you to drop the boundary, the narcissistic parent may label you as selfish, rude, or even ask you how you could do that to them. They might even throw in the ever popular, "but I raised you." If you're taking care of personal needs, those come first. You can't pour from an empty cup. Number 6, my emotions make me dramatic. Have you ever stood up to a narcissistic parent? So I know someone who did. We'll call them Casey. When Casey let their parents know how hurt and abused they felt, their parents didn't quite agree. Casey was told they were dramatic and that they weren't perfect either. Their parents refused to acknowledge that they ever treated Casey poorly. They even accused Casey of making things up for attention. Casey knew this wasn't the truth.
That's a massive one as well. A lack of self-reflection. That's a big one. Like, how do you, talking about self-improvement, for example, we self-improve because we are able to analyze our weak points, where we've been failing at. But how can a person ever improve in any way, whether it's mentally or any other way, when you don't even have the ability to self-reflect, to know what wrong you've been doing, right? To be aware of your wrongdoing. That's many Black parents, and again, that's why it's taboo to talk about this, because if you bring it up, like, you're going against God, you're going against the ancestors who you can never you must always honor.
Knew they had to go no contact. Sure, they may ground you every now and then, but there's a difference between parenting and emotional abuse. This is, again, your parents' feelings of rejection coming up and them not being able to cope with it. If you speak up and aren't being listened to, more likely dismissed, this could be a sign of a narcissistic parent. And number 7, I don't have anything to contribute. You and your parents are talking about the new restaurant you all want to go to, and you begin raving about how good your meal was. What would a narcissistic parent do? If they don't agree, they may tell you that your palate is awful, or you don't know food. They're quick to negate and oppose anything you might be saying by making you question your own self. Whether you're talking about contributing to a cause, a conversation, a group project, or a romantic relationship, the narcissist needs to always be the best. The number 1, the head honcho. It can be about any topic, but if the narcissist feels undermined or intimidated by you, they'll make you feel like you have nothing of value to add to any situation you're in, which isn't true at all. Remember, when a negative thought pops up, ask yourself, whose words are these? Are they mine or my parents'?
Okay. I think I'm going to review a lot of what this channel has to offer, because a lot of their content, a lot of people can review, reuse. You don't need to announce fair use. But very important stuff to discuss, man. Psychology. A lot of us, I feel, haven't really tried to analyze properly the circumstances of which we were raised. And I think going around full circle to the main topic, the fault is with the family. Like, you shouldn't be expecting the, British schools to be teaching you about your history. And, again, people like to rebuttal with, oh, what about Chinese history? We know those YouTubers that lean on the other, what about Chinese? Where's Chinese History Month? Where's Indian History Month? Where's White History Month? Well, that's because in many cases, a lot of these people, they have their own, like many of my old Chinese friends, Vietnamese friends, they have their own Saturday school where they're learning their history, they're learning their script. So there was no need to beg and request for, why are you not going to teach me my history, UK? It's very it's a very infantile request, and I think that's where a lot of us, or the people, are. I can't say us, but yeah, a lot of it's infantile, begging, basically. So yeah, I say all that to say, yeah, our parents are supposed to teach us this history, man. But yeah, this is this is what I'm saying. I want to bring people up. If you are keen on coming up, if you want to say your point, feel free to. The link is pinned to the top of the chat. And I really don't know why I play that, but I just wanted a change of scenery. Forgive me. Let me read a few chats that I've missed. I know I've been just talking, but I appreciate everyone in the building, everyone who's shown love already and support. Salute to everyone here. CBC Boxing says, what's your thoughts on Africans wanting European acceptance? You need to go a bit deeper on what you mean by that when you say acceptance, because this is, again, another key point that people in opposition, I'm talking about Black British people, first, second generation people, it's something to think about, the idea of conforming to some degree. We spoke about this so many times, but this is a pressing issue at this point. What is the next 20, 30 years looking like for you? Are you going to be in Europe, be in the UK, or are you going to be elsewhere? Do you have plans set for that, or is it a pipe dream? My opinion is, looking at it very logically, yeah, there is going to be some level of conformation that has to take place. All right, so yeah, that might be a techie one. But salute to everyone in the building, man. We got, let's see who's in the back. One sec. Stop screen. Okay, we got brother JM in the building. Apologies, we had Manchester Blue a minute ago, but yeah, sorry, man. I know it it went on for a bit, but I appreciate you for attempting to come up anyway. We also got Kings and Queens in the back. Salute. So, okay, so anyone who wants to chime in, feel free to hit the link. We'll be here for a few minutes if you want to talk about this. We're talking about who is supposed to teach Black people Black history, right? And I guess, what is the value of a Black History Month today, in the modern times? And that can be linked to the family and upbringing and all of that I spoke about. So anything along those lines, feel free to talk about what you think. And I just noticed on JM's handle, it says Sean Coonery. Let's go, man. JM, how you doing this evening?
Yeah, hi.
Salute, bro. You good?
Busy day. I'm just tired. I'm now doing a copywriting course. So.
Oh, wow, man. That's associated with your stuff. I don't want to air it out, but it's associated with your stuff, right?
Yeah, associated with my stuff. That will be coming soon.
Good. That's good to hear, man. I need to learn copywriting as well, man. I need to copyright my little logos and stuff too.
Yeah, it's a high income skill. I could get paid a lot of money for doing it.
Or is that trademarking? I've got these things.
Copyright. Trademarking is something else. Trade, because of I think Britain has an automatic copyright system anyway. But copywriting is where you're basically writing text to persuade people to take action. So
right, sounds
that's
good.
really what I'm doing.
Sounds good. But let me just ask you the question, man. Who's supposed to teach Black people Black history, in your opinion?
Black people in the Black family, obviously. My pet peeve about it is really, for me, I don't really want to hear about it, because I've looked at Black history and let's just say it's pretty depressing, only up until, I would say, but there's a few, let's say, redeeming bits of history where I say fair enough. I don't know if you heard of the Gullah Wars, where I think Haiti stopped, I think it was the Americans from taking over Haiti or something.
Was that the Haitian Revolution? Was that against France or someone?
I think it was France. I think it was France, not America. I don't think it was America. And then
the thing about Haiti, though, is that that seems like a very momentous occasion, right? Like that almost like a fairy tale. Oh, the slaves won back and they got the country. But when you look at Haiti today, man, it's like
the mess. So you got that. I would say the Windrush generation, and then besides that, the grand scheme of things, most of Black history I just don't really bother with, to be honest. There's a few. John Archer is the first Black mayor of London, fair enough. You could have a shout about South Africa, but then yet again, with Mandela and so on and so forth.
Mm.
Really, with the British, Black British history, it's not very impactful in my opinion. I only could really think of
Okay, I think Jay had to leave us for a few minutes. That's cool.
I'm back.
Still there? Okay.
Basically, yeah, regarding the black, the Windrush generation, and probably John Archer. And those are the only things that I could really say that I would say that has sticked out in my mind. Most of the Black history stuff, I just don't want to hear it because it just seems to be just oppression after oppression and oppression, and I just don't really want that in my mindset, and I don't really want that as my image as a Black person,
Mm.
like me walking around as the symbol of oppression.
That's
You know what I'm saying? Like, because it's like, okay, it's like, yeah, history this, history that, and another thing as well is this is something where not all Black people, but some Black people, they tend to make up history too,
uh-oh.
right? And there's like, for example, I asked for verified information, like if this is true,
Mhm.
right? And that's another issue I have. So it gets diluted in what was real and what wasn't, right? Like, I understand slavery obviously happened, right? But then not everything Black is to do with slavery. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Like, there's more to it. Like, fair enough, you had Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. Fair enough, right? There's documentation of that.
Mm.
But it's just mostly negative. Like, before I finished, there was one person, like, I remember watching something from Sarah Garvey, right? Where this was a very powerful insight in terms of how he thinks, even with like his child, right? Like he has a son, right? And I remember him talking about how he named his son after an African king or something, right?
Mm.
And he didn't teach him the oppression of Black history, only the positive parts of Black history, and it basically had a more positive impact on his child or something. And I thought that was pretty interesting because I remember another thing as well is a lot of us have been lied to, meaning in terms of a balanced history, right? Because what was literally taught to me in school, because I went to a school in Wimbledon College. School I went to was Wimbledon College, and literally the narrative was white people came into Africa, blew up the shit out of Black people, took them as slaves, put them on boats, and that was pretty much it. But what they
Mhm.
didn't mention was before all of this was going off was Africans was also putting other Black people in slavery, other Africans in slavery. And then they wasn't teaching about the Arabic slave trade as well before that, right? So it's like they almost fast forward into the slavery, let's say history, into just European slavery, basically.
Why do you think that is the case? Like you mentioned this, well, you didn't say it explicitly, but this victim mentality or uh, feeling like people need to feel sorry for you. Oh, Black History Month. Oh, you've been oppressed. Why do you think, if you think that there is a more light is put onto the oppressive side of history, like
Maybe that is just the safer narrative. Because really, when you look at it, imagine if in schools, right, where they were talking about the Arabic slave trade, right, and then they were
mm,
talking about the African slave trade. They were teaching this at a young age,
mm,
right? I know this may sound a bit strange, but what I'll see is it will cause a different type of atmosphere and like between, let's say, certain ethnic groups,
mm,
right? So if you're the Arab slave trade, you're probably gonna, let's say, put, let's say, Muslims in that category, right?
mm,
So if kids knew that, there may have been a bit of friction between them. Then if they knew about Africans, slaves, so other Africans into slavery, then that could be maybe they were probably dealing with even more self hate that some Africans are already dealing with, right?
mm.
So that's just really that. And what I realized is, as I got older and I started looking at started doing my own revision history, a lot of things started to change in my perspective, even as a black person, as even when I'm living in this country, right? And for me, I feel mentally free in this country, to be honest. Like,
Mm.
that's just me. Like, and you know, I was watching another video by a YouTuber called Jay Wise, and there was this woman uh talking about Black Lives Matter and so on and so forth, right? And look, I don't really feel oppressed in this country. I feel pretty much mentally free. Yes, there's going to be certain nuances where certain people are going to perceive me in a certain way and so on and so forth because of the color of my skin in certain cases, cool. But for me, I feel just mentally free in this country. I don't really feel like there's anything holding me back,
Mm.
right? And that's where the historic part of actually having a more balanced view of the history actually started changing my mindset in regards of becoming a victim to actually a victor, right?
Mm.
And the way I know this is because um I was doing a lecture at so before I close, right, I was doing a
Mhm.
lecture at the UCL
Mm.
about just something black cultural, and the narrative was a narrative of victimhood. And this was in my early 20s, right? And this was before I knew any better, right? I
Mm.
was this guy that I thought, yeah, I had to work 3 times harder as a black man, and this
Mm.
country is against me, and yada yada yada, right? That type of narrative, right? Now my narrative has changed, right? Where I don't really feel as if I'm oppressed, right? I
Right.
don't have these undertones where I think, oh, someone's staring at me because I'm black. It could be multiple reasons why. It could be multiple factors why that person crossed the road,
Right.
right?
Right.
Um, I finding out why people follow me around the shops, not because I'm black. I actually have a black security guard that actually pointed out to me why they actually do that, and they actually tell him to do that, and he's black himself, right? So that's just it's a really big mass for me, even you know as a young guy, right? It's a
Mm.
massive it's a massive mind f. Basically, it's a massive mind f. Like once you get your head around it, and then you understand, and then you actually understand the British point of view in terms of why some white people didn't actually want us here, right? Um, it may actually change your perspective, right? Because if you look at the grand scheme of things, I'm not 100% sure. Um, Democracy was overridden for us to be here. That's what I think. I think that is what happened. I'm not 100%
How
sure.
do you mean by that?
All right. So I
As
don't
in,
think I
as
don't
in,
think
like,
there
do
was
you mean like immigration, for example?
yes, and I don't think I mean the generation before. I mean like the generation before our parents, right?
Mhm.
So what I mean is let's say the natives, right? Let's say the native English, right?
Mhm.
Or the indigenous English, right? They didn't have a say or a vote in regards of black people coming to this country. I could be wrong, right? You
Mhm.
may have to look that up. But if that is the case, and considering that British people care a lot about democracy, right? Even during those times, right, I could understand why they kind of felt some sort of way about it. Now, I'm not condoning the racism and the hate towards black people, obviously, but I look at the two point of views, right? Because there's a lot I think when we were growing up and we were taught certain things at school, a lot of things was left out on both sides, on the English side and the Caribbean and people coming here.
Mhm.
Right? And another thing as well to end is when I hear black people complaining about, oh, where is our history and so on and so forth, bro, it's all on the internet, bro. You just gotta do your research in it. Like it just is what it is. But yeah, I'm done.
Mm. Okay, good opener, Jam. Well said. Many points that we could go back to in a few minutes. We also got Kings and Queens in the building. How are you doing this evening, Kings and Queens?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Thanks for bringing us up, Falcon.
Always.
JM, how you doing? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm doing all
Nice
right.
one.
You know?
Yeah, nice one. Yeah,
Good to have you up, Kings and Queens. I mean, you know, I want you to express yourself in however way you want, but I also want to ask initially. I know it might come across as a very elementary question, but I mean, who is supposed to teach black people black history in your uh, opinion?
Well, I think I agree with JM. I think I heard JM and yourself say it's to do with the home. It must happen. It starts from the home, right? Like all teaching, it starts at home. So that's my answer to that question. But there's loads of issues there, and I think you hinted at some of the issues regarding the state of the family, right? It's sadly, years ago, and I was just talking about this with my wife. We've been there listening to your show, right? So when I was a kid, you used to get an area like Brixton, and it wasn't. Obviously, no one. The highest anybody studied was probably to go to technical school or whatever it's called, polytechnic, to learn how to do, woodwork, right? But the truth is, you had learning through the community. In other words, the values. All of that stuff got taught, right, through family and through the community. That's how it was for a short time. My wife begs to differ. She says it was for a bit longer. I just think there was a sweet spot there, and that sweet spot has gone, right? So forget all that, right? But it should happen through the family. But when you've got a community full of baby mamas. So I'm not going to go into that. Don't worry. But when you've got a family full, listen, so. When you look at Ilford, right, it's a very Asian area, right? When they do a festival, they shut the road off. The buses have to go down a different road, right? And so, their children go to, school during the day like all other children. But in the evening, their children go to their own little centres doing their own things in their own places. Right? They don't leave it all up to the government for anything. And what they tend to do is send all of their kids to the same school, and then they look to get on the governors, the board of governors. The board of governors in any school, for those that don't know, hire the head teacher, and the head teacher has to go and sit down and answer to the board of governors. Right? They get if there's a PTA, the Asian parents on the PTA, they control the school. Right, this is really, really, really important, right? And the families, mother, father, extended families, they control. You've got a way of doing it. You've got an ecosystem of socialization. That's what you've got going on there, right? And it spreads. It starts in the home, right? When the parents have to go, or when the father goes to work, because a lot of the mothers may stay at home, but you've got the grandparents there, right? Bouncing the babies on the knee, teaching them what they want their grandkids to learn. Right, you could all under the same roof. I'm not saying you have to live under the same roof. What I'm saying is that when you've got family that sticks together, mother, father, right, and all of that going on, right, then you can teach your kids whatever you want them to know. And then when you control your environment, the school is actually in your environment. Right, then you can direct the curriculum of the school. So all of that has been happening for Asians for years. Right, that's just a fact. The Jewish community up there in Elstree, up there in North London, down there, they do the same thing. Right, Chinese kids, they send their kids to private school, right? and then they teach their children at home what they want their children to learn, and they stay married. Right, this is the key. They stay married. The men don't have to worry about their women running off somewhere, right, and running to divorce court. They don't have to worry about that, right? They also don't have to worry about their women having kids for 5, 6, 7 different men, right? Because which man is going to buy into a situation? You don't even know if the kids are yours. Anyway, I don't want to digress, right? So so it's this whole thing about controlling your environment, and to some small degree, we did it in 1 or 2 places in the UK, right? But that hasn't happened for a long time, basically. I mean, there's academic solutions, right? But it's all secondary. I did put it in the chat. The whole thing about, but then you've got to be involved in your children's school, basically. And it takes more than 1, 2 parents. It takes a whole community to force a school to act a certain way. In fact, to put one of your people as head teacher in your local school. Do you get what I mean? You hire the man or woman that you want, because you're on the board. It's you and your people that make up the board of governors, and then you hire one of your Asian men and women from your community that can do the job, but you make sure they get it, and then you say, right, for the Indians, they're going to value and a system way of doing things that benefit the children in the school. Do you get what I mean?
Right.
There you go.
You know what, King and Queens? I think we should go there because I spoke about the black family as well, and from my angle, it's that the previous generations just it seems like they just didn't do a good job, So speaking about relationships, because we often come to from the angle of single mother, and of course that's going to play a part because there's less attention to the kid, less effort, less hands-on, right? But I want to ask, and this is open to JM and to Kings and Queens too, like, is this coming from, is this inability to hold relationships, wholesome relationships, to stay married, is this also coming from being raised under, like emotional trauma from a neglectful family or parent? Do you think there are links there? Because I'm starting to meet the dots, because for me, I think that's the root.
Sorry, is the question, are you asking if your experience in whatever family setup you had, are you asking if that affects how you do your relationships later on in life?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think the answer is a definite yes, because I mean, obviously, many years ago, I dated a young lady, gorgeous looking woman, but she was not sexually, but physically molested by her father. He used to, or was it? It was the dad. He used to beat them up so much. She had lots of chops in her back. Her back was covered with chops, right? Marks, her and her sister, right? So they went into foster care, right? And it absolutely, when she got annoyed, she just said, "You're not my father. You can't tell me what to do." I said to her, "I'm not your dad." Of course I'm not, but so I know that's an extreme example, I suppose, but then if you're abused, I don't mean if your parents come and turn off the TV and say go to bed, right? That's considered them, or if your parents take away your mobile phone, we're not talking about that. But if you experience real abuse, then that's going to mark everything in your whole life. It's gonna, even if you don't know. And I've got a friend who's she's a psychologist, and she said as much. She said with her private clients, she basically takes them back to childhood. She said to me that everyone's issues, right, is related to somebody's childhood. That's what she told me.
Yeah. James, are you there? What do you think on it if you're there? Nope, I don't think he is. But I'm just starting to see that it stems from that. But okay, you typically speak about baby mamas, and you use the example of that this archetypical woman who's going to meet with many different men. Do you not think that's also linked to potential trauma in their upbringing?
Yeah, of course. It's linked to a few things, right? Definitely linked to trauma, right? 100%. As a youth worker, I had one young lady years ago tell me that, she told me at the age of about 14 or 15 that she wants loads and loads of babies, right? And that's not bad in itself if you're going to talk about marriage, right? But she just said, "I just want loads of babies," right? Growing up, we've all known, we got a family friend, she's a big woman now, but how many kids she got? I've lost count. She's got about 8 kids for 3 different men. And she started having kids when she was 15 years old, right? She looks good for it, right? So honestly, she does, right? But you see, so on the one hand, right, if boys or girls lack a father figure in the home, there's academic research to say that fathers increase educational outcomes. That's an academic study that's been done, right? But it's not just that, it's the whole thing about fathering and what fathers bring, which is role modeling, order, a range of things, right? It's a sense of belonging, knowing what men should be, basically, in your life as a young girl, right? So if that is absent, right, then you're going to be looking for a father figure in the wrong places, basically. And you're going to be looking for that love, and it doesn't come. It doesn't come through sex. It doesn't. And a lot of girls make that mistake. On the other, so there's that whole thing, right? A lack of input, right? On the other side of it is even if there is a father in the house, right? Your job as well is to put the fear of God into your daughter, right? Because, naturally speaking, boys and girls, what do they want to do? They want to have sex. That's what they want to do. And that's not a bad thing. It just needs to be controlled, right? And if that control mechanism isn't there, if the father's not doing his job in the house, if he's giving his daughter anything she wants, right, then basically she may, not going to, there's no definite, but she may basically just run around and do whatever with whoever.
Right.
That's more unlikely if the father's there. I'm saying it's possible, right? So on the one hand, you got trauma that causes this issue of making babies before you marry, right? And the only reason I do talk about that is because those children, their life outcomes are better. And that is why I mention it. If life outcomes through marriage were the same as your parents not being married, right, I wouldn't even bother talking about it. It's only because the life outcomes, the research is that your life outcomes are literally better, and the longer your parents stay together, your life outcomes are better. So and when you look at black people in the UK or anywhere else, right, then you can see that difference. The difference is measurable. And I know people don't like facts, but that's if it made no difference, then there's no point talking about it. Do you know what I mean? And the other, so you've got trauma on the one side, right? But on the other side, you've got dare I say, a lack of poor parenting. Do you get what I mean? Whereby you let your daughter do what the hell she wants, right? You don't instill those boundaries when your daughter is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, relentlessly instill it into them, so that when they, and then you educate. That's what parenting is, and that's what a father does. And that's why a lot of women in 2023 don't want men in the house, because you're bringing what you're bringing to that situation is it's like children wanting to rebel against parents, right? That is what women want to do with men. That's why they don't want men there, right? And so bringing it back to this point about we're talking about Black history and all the rest of it, right? What's interesting for me is that it's mainly men that instill Black history into their children. And the ones that are honestly, and the ones that are more sometimes not all the time, but sometimes against that happening is the mother or the wife or the woman in the house. Not all the time, sometimes, because they see it as being dogmatic. They see it as being all of those negative things, rather than understanding actually every other culture does it. The Asians do it. The Chinese do it. They're just quiet about it. The Jewish people, they do it. They all do it. It's for some weird reason, right? In this country, or probably not just in this country, but it's this weird thing where a lot of Black men are not allowed to educate their own children. It's odd,
Okay, man, great points, King and Queens. JM is back. And JM, basically, I don't know if you heard the discussion, but we were talking about how, yes, we can see that single parent households will make it so that, the likelihood of teaching Black history to kids will be less likely because there's less attention, there's less people there, right? And then we kind of speak about, the single mother epidemic to some degree and trauma. But in your opinion, do you think how would you think boys are affected via bad parenting, if you've seen it in your life? Like, how do you think we are affected?
Well, I could talk about I could probably write a whole essay on that, but because I was a youth worker, so I know, right? And I've been in the homes as well, right? And see how they move and operate and all that jazz, right? What I would say is, one is depression, more likely to get bullied, right? I don't know if you're Black.
That's a good one. Yeah, I agree.
Right. Here's a thing that some of them do where they train their kids, right? There's a reason. I explain why a lot of Black, let's say boys or even girls in certain cases, right, get bullied in school, is parents are indirectly training, right, their kids to not express themselves. And let me explain
Mm.
what I mean, right? So say you're a kid, right? Say you're around 8, maybe 9 years old, whatever, and you see an injustice, even though you're a kid, you know kind of you're starting to understand the difference between right and wrong, right?
Mm.
And you know wrong has happened to you, right? And as a kid, you basically answer back, right?
Mm.
So what does the parents tell you to do? Do not answer back, or they
Mm.
say do not get vexed, right?
Mm.
The reality is, as humans, what you're basically doing is you're training your kid to not feel, right?
Mm.
And you train your kid not to express themselves, right? Which, in my opinion, I think a kid should, right? I understand that fathers in the home obviously need, and parents need to have some sort of authority over their children. Understandable,
Mhm.
but what I tend to see is there's not a balance, right?
Right.
So what happens is then they go to school, right? Say a kid like starts saying stuff to them and so on and so forth, then they don't know how to defend themselves because they've been trained to not express themselves.
Mm.
Right? People don't really clock onto this, right? And this was what happens is as time goes on, they become more passive aggressive.
Mhm.
So what happens is they don't have the middle ground, which is assertiveness, right?
Mm.
And assertiveness is the right balance between basically really standing up against bullies. You're not
Right.
aggressive, but you're not passive. You're assertive, right?
Right.
What I see in a lot of these households is they say, "Oh, do not answer back, do not get vexed," but you are meant to feel. So as
Mm.
you get older, and various things that change, you've been trained for that, unless you actually have the let's say, introspection work yourself, and you have self awareness
Mm.
of looking into how you can, you know, get out of that cycle. You're going to end up being depressed. You're going to end up being less expressive, more having a
Mm.
more stoic, stone faced face, right?
Mm.
Because you got to have a balance of it. And this is why a lot of guys say, "Oh, hey, look, showing a bit, don't show weakness, so on and so forth." So you don't have a balance of expression. So
Right.
what happens is your emotional state or let's say your mental state is more inwards, right?
Right.
That's why you have a lot of people who are, let's say, self-deleting themselves,
Right.
right? Because they
Or
can't.
deleting other people, right? Because like
Right.
if you have no outlet for your inner, I remember when I was a teenager, man, like just watch like the type of things we might watch Dragon Ball Z. Like I was really like you can really be in your mind and be negative and be kind of like just dark. If there's no outlet or if there's no one speaking to you about that, or if you're not training in something, or you don't have a coach or some person that can see this, you could be anything. You could be a stone cold killer.
Right. Because there was one person I would say that during my 20s really helped me, even though he probably didn't even know he was doing it, was to stop too much of the emotionality, right?
Mm.
Because even though it was me as a 20, even in my 20s, right? I was a pretty emotional guy, right? But I
Mhm.
understood that there's certain emotions that I couldn't show, right? Because I potentially could understand the consequences if I do show those emotions, right? Such as anger or aggression, right? But when I went into sports and so on and so forth, um, my coach helped a lot with that over the years. I didn't realize it until now, like when I actually look back,
Mm.
right? In terms of that, and I also did speak on, I think it was O'Shea Duke Jackson's channel, about masculinity and basically overcoming the single mother, right?
Mhm. Team
And
O'Shea.
yeah, and the thing is once you get into a certain mind state, you can actually even if you're living in a single parent household right now, right? There's certain things that you can overcome, right? Even living in it, like you have to have a sense of independence, even though you're living in at your parents' house,
Yeah.
right? But eventually, the end goal is to basically move out and live on your own, right? But
Mhm.
unfortunately, in certain cases, that is not always the case for some people,
Mhm.
right? So that's really what I would say in terms of how bad parenting affects, and I've seen this, with women as well. Um, when I get women to open up to me, some of the stuff they've said about how their relationship with their father, and the correlations I always start to see is teen pregnancies or unwanted pregnancies or getting into really dysfunctional relationships,
Right.
right? And various things of that nature, or the stereotypical, even when, again, Sarah Garvey again dropping jewels with the Stabber Man and the Kwame comparison, if you've seen that video,
No,
where,
what's that about?
all right, so basically he made a parody, right? About, and this is really well how he did it, right? He had a youth, right? He had these caricatures on a board, right? And there was one guy called Stabberman, right? So Stabberman is basically this guy who is your stereotypical bad boy or pookie that people would say in America, or your road bag, right?
Mhm.
So you'll have a woman, which was called Keisha, right, who would deal with a Stabberman, right?
Mm.
And a Stabberman is basically the road man, bad boy type of dude, right? And then you had a Kwame, right, who is basically a guy that is slowly getting his life together, doing the right thing on the right path, right? And the trajectory I always seem to see is the black men who are on their stuff, who are actually, let's say, the Kwames of the world, right, who are actually doing what they should be doing, right, end up, if they are not smart enough and they don't understand their self-worth, end up being the stepfathers to these women who've been dealing with these stabbermans, basically.
Mm.
You understand? And that's another thing where in a single parent household where they're not taught healthy relationships because they can't see it, they don't have the blueprint to make, because I see this all the time. Like even today, right? I was on my I was on a Discord webcam and everything. I was talking with some of my black friends, right? The Ghanaians, Ugandans, right? And even Nigerians, right? And I was on a live stream. I was on a Discord and webcam. We were talking about hairlines and head shapes and a whole bunch of stuff, right? So basically, I started asking them questions. I started saying, "Where was your father? Did you live with your father?" Yeah, and basically they opened up and he said, like for example, I had one friend who said he bounced when he was like at a certain age, like 10 years old, and all of that. So it was kind of like a low key therapy session, and we were talking it, and like you can see like how the father not being the own, and there was one guy who did have a father, and you could tell the differences in terms of the interactions with the opposite sex and how they talk about the opposite sex. Like I could see it's as clear as day, Like for example, the guy that had a father in his home, he was more positive about female relations, and the guy that didn't, he was more, let's say, had a more negative mindset towards the relationships. Right. And this is the thing. I'm a very analytical person. I'm always picking up on things, right, at very, very quick speed and just rapid in that. And that's what I really have harbored. And this is what I think just creates the cycle over and over again, right? And this same reflection with the daughters, where they're going to get pregnant to a guy that's just absolute garbage, and then they're going to have to now deal with the mess and, let's say, the after effect of having a father who just ain't ish, right? Because I remember one person we actually talk about. I'm not going to talk about it here, right? And it's like a constant cycle where now, because that father's so dysfunctional, by default, that daughter's now that person, whoever that woman brought into the world, is now already started from day one as a baby without a father. You understand? Like this is how like serious of an issue this is when it comes to the black community regarding parenting. And this is why I just don't have. I can't, when I see people, like when I see these community leaders talking about pointing fingers at other people, I'm just like, bro, like them times are done. It's you guys. Because I'm taking the right, I'm doing the right steps and doing the right responsible things and understanding if I should or if I'm fit to be a father. Do you get what I'm saying? So that's really all I got to say.
Well put, well put. We got MJA 2873 coming through again with a $5 super chat. I really appreciate that. And let me give you the sound off with my rusty gun. I really appreciate the support. MJA says, is teen pregnancy the main problem in parenting? because most teens are not fully mature to raise children. Besides, the brain fully develops at 23. Appreciate you, MJA 2873, for showing love as always, man. I really appreciate that. What do you guys think? Is teen pregnancy the main problem?
Yeah, well, put it this way, it doesn't help. And, you know, I mean, the truth is, you know, I don't know about you guys, but I know quite a few young girls, you know, young black and white girls that have had babies in their teens. And you see, you know, my mom's passed now, but you know, she had all her kids in the 60s, right? But people got married younger as well. You know, back then people got married younger, right? So you might have been young, but then you were married. You know, do you get what I mean? So the situation then was different. Teen pregnancy then compared to now is way different. You know, most of these girls that get pregnant now or have babies now, right? They're not doing that as young married girls, young married women. You know, it's a sign really of poverty. That's really what it is. You know, how many middle class girls, upper middle class girls whose parents have a father in the house whose parents are professional? How many of them get pregnant at 15? Very few, right? You know, so how is it that I know so many young girls, so many, you know, kids from certain backgrounds that had babies in their teens, you know, that have got 20-year-old children, right? 20-year-old children, and they're 35. Right? You get what I mean? You know, some whose boys, when they walk around, go shopping with their boys, people think it's their partner, right? So you know that's so yeah, 100%. It's a massive issue, massive issue. Having babies too young is a big issue, and trying to have babies when you're 45 as a woman is an issue too, right? You know, there's a time there. There's a period, right, that is optimal to ensure you have a decent community. Do you get what I mean? All right, there's a time, and when you fall out of that either way, there is an issue. But there's another thing that my wife said as well when we were listening to you, Falcon. She spoke about, because you know her dad's Ghanaian, her mum's Nigerian, right? So she said that there's two things. She said that, you know, a lot of that generation really could only teach their children, because we're talking about Black history, a lot of that generation can only teach their children their own experience, you know, what they knew, how they grew up, right? Media may or may not have been brilliant in some of the places and spaces where our parents came from, right? So, you know, and so that's what she said. So I think that's a really good point. You know, so I can teach you what I know, my personal experience. This is how I grew up. I don't know. No one taught me about. And then I added to her point. I said, you know, our parents, you know, basically were educated within a colonial education system, right? So if your parents come from West Africa or any colonial country, the education that you had, if you come from what some people like to call francophone countries, then sadly your education, you're going to learn French, right? That's number one, and you're going to learn about yourself through the eyes of a colonial French education system. If you come from Jamaica, right, it's all you know, in up until quite recently. It's changed now, right? But up until recently, it was all, you know, just white English history. It's as simple as that, right? So you're not going to learn nothing about the Haitian Revolution, you know, if you're my mum's generation. She didn't even know there was a revolution there, right? And Haiti is only, 60 kilometers away from Jamaica. But yet she didn't know there's a revolution there, right? You know, I was the one that had to tell her, no, there's a revolution in Haiti, right? Do you get what I mean? So growing up on the colonial systems of education, you can forget it. It's none of that. Our parents' generation knew nothing about. They were taught nothing at school at all when it comes to anything to do with any Black history whatsoever. You know, nothing. When my brother was at,
sorry to cut you. The thing about colonialization, is that again we've got Asians that fell under that as well. But it seems like, and from what I know, I might be ignorant, but most African colonies weren't colonized for that long, or at least as long as a place like India, for example. But yeah, it seems like even under that oppression and under that kind of tutelage, for example, Indian people seem to retain elements of their culture a lot better than a lot of, say, West Africans in this country, for example.
And you know what? You make a completely brilliant point there. You know what? You're absolutely correct. So that's a good question. Why is it that? Because in India, as far as I know, they don't speak French. They speak English, but they don't speak French. But I think your point is brilliant. So the question is, why is it that in various parts of Africa? Okay, so I'm thinking about this, and I'm sort of thinking, and I don't know the answer to your question. I'm going to put it. I'm not going to pretend I know the answer. I think it's a really good question, because, correct me if I'm wrong, India and Pakistan was controlled by one country, right? The UK, as far as I understand it, right?
Yeah.
Africa was carved up, right? So, and some of those countries, it seems to me that they forbade the people to speak their native languages. Literally, right? So in Burkina Faso, in various African francophone countries, they literally speak French, national language. You go to Ghana, all of the signage is in English. It's not in Tree, it's not in Fanti. It's written all in English, right? So it leaves me thinking, right, that possibly, and I don't know the answer, possibly in India and in Pakistan. I remember that was one country. They had to divide it because they had all the Indians were killing all the Muslims. Muslims had to move to Pakistan, as I understand it, right? So it may or may not be, I don't know the answer, it may or may not be that the British Raj, which is what they called it at the time, was less bothered about controlling the day-to-day lives of the Indians, maybe. Or at least less concerned with it as they were in various parts of the African continent. Why they imposed styles of dress in urban areas in India. They said to the Indians, if you want a job in our government, then you need to speak English. But what was going on in rural India? Do you get what I mean? Maybe they were able to keep more of their cultural practice, but in any case, maybe it may even be, and again I don't know the answer. Maybe it may even be whether or not it was patriarchal and matriarchal in nature as well in various places. Maybe it was the fact that they were, I'm going to use that phrase, allowed to keep their religions, Hinduism, Islam, and maybe they value them more than Africans valued their own.
Sure, that's a great point. Yeah, of course, a different treatment by the colonial powers. That's a good point.
So but it's this whole thing about asking our parents to teach us stuff they simply didn't know. And where our generations, if you like, are finding out. I mean, I began buying my mum a load of books. I bought her a load of books, basically. I don't think she read any of them, but I bought them for her. My brother my oldest brother, one of my older brothers, started reading for the last 10 years, right? Did he teach his children anything that he's read for the last 10 years? No. God bless him, you know what I mean? He did nothing. They all grew up and left the house, and then he started to read. Do you know what I mean? So, we can teach our children, I think, only what we know and also what we're interested in as well,
Yeah, fair point. I mean, I think a lot of people, they say, for example, why is it that Asian kids are able to speak their parents' language and African kids usually can't, right? We're usually speaking English or French. And, your point is a strong point, different treatment as well. So like a different different access to the culture and history, right? And being allowed to do such things. I can agree with that. But I also think to some extent there is a lack of interest, to be honest, as brutally as that sounds. But I think that there's just a lack of effort. I mean, we speak about the weekend schools that some Asian cultures have. It's not the closest thing to that in some African cultures is just church, and it's just.
But through church, you're right. But through, you are correct. But through church, when Black people first came to the UK, right? We had a holy Saturday and Sunday schools. They're all gone now.
Right.
right? But we had a whole heap of these things, right? Whereby, you know, I mean, and it's quite big as well, you know. So you'd go to church on a Sunday or Saturday, right, and learn maths and English, right? You know, in some of the bigger chain churches, like Caribbean churches, you'd go and learn maths and English. They literally, and not only church kids would go, anybody could go. Right, all of that's disappeared. All of that's disappeared. I mean, you know, I don't know how many years ago, 10 years ago, 12, 15 years ago, I used to teach, you know, 1 or 2 subjects literally during the week after 6 in the church.
Right.
You know, in my church, I used to teach you. So we had an arts academy thing. Kids could come and do dance, art, God, what else was it? Dance, art, music, and this, that, and the other. From 6 o'clock onwards. I mean, we got funding to do it.
I'm more meaning in terms of the specific cultures, right? In terms of learning the language, pass it on to the kids.
And I hear you.
Urdu, speaking in, like, it just seems like the effort just isn't there.
I think you're right. I think the effort. Sorry to cut you off. I think the effort's not there, but I think you're right. Again, you know, I know a lot of people that come from West Africa, you know, Nigeria, Ghana. Did their parents teach them Tree or Igbo or Yoruba? The answer is no, right? And you know, and so I'm kind of like thinking, why? And the only answer I could come up with personally is the you know, the value that they place on it, whether that's below or above learning English, and where that comes from. Personally, I think is if you've been trained to value your Englishness, if you've been trained to do that from birth, literally back in Jamaica, back in Trinidad, back in Nigeria, back in Ghana, back in, you know, I don't know, Kenya, if you've been trained to, you know, Uganda, if you've been trained to value everything that's English, well, you're going to see your own language as being secondary. You are
brainwashing.
It's, you know, and it's sad, but you know.
King of the Queens, man, great point. JM needs to go, but I want JM to have. Actually, I want to do closing thoughts because I'm getting a bit. I get to doze off when it comes to the 2-hour mark, but I appreciate everyone coming through, man. JM, what are your closing thoughts? But also, if you know, I want you to big up your channel and stuff like that because I really appreciate your contribution, man. Apologies if I didn't get to you as often.
No problem.
In terms of teaching Black history, like, what do you think will help, or what can it be helped?
I don't really think there's much to really do. Really, it's really on the.
One more question, actually.
Huh?
Is it? Do Black British people need to be a bit more conformist to the English kind of traditions and culture? That's the more that is the more inflammatory question, because I'm starting to think that perhaps we're just not doing enough, and then we're demanding so much that it almost doesn't make sense at the end of the day, and it's causing a lot of friction and just, I don't know. It's just a very weird situation. But sorry, I jumped in.
No worries. I would say yeah. I would say especially even in the previous, even the generation now that, you know, I'm living as like Gen millennial or whatever. I would say yeah, but then you got to look at the grand scheme of things. So, for example, the generations, you know, the Windrush generation and generation a bit after that, I could understand why they would be kind of against British culture in a certain extent because of how they were treated when they came here.
Right.
So they wouldn't have an affinity for the country in the first place, right? Which, you know, is completely understandable. But if I said right now in 2023, as a millennial, 32-year-old or even a bit older, right, who close around maybe Gen X or whatever, I would say I don't think I would say to an extent, I don't think they're doing enough, right? Because I think when I really look at the grand scheme of things, is what is it besides entertainment and certain cultures? What is it that we actually offer to this country that is beneficial? Right. When I really look at the grand scheme, because when you ever look at other cultures, right, this is why if you look at, for example, there was a talk of the Chinese and why look, they don't have to have they don't have to have a Chinese History Month when they have literally Chinatown
Mm,
and various places where they are pretty much celebrating. And there's, Chinatown is not just in London. There's other places in the country where there's Chinese stuff, right?
that's a good point.
And the other thing as well is, another thing I will say is, it seems to be in London and in England now, it seems to be, when it comes to race in Britain, it just seems to be black people and white people. Like everyone else is just, in terms of the presence,
Mm,
that's what it seems to be. It seems to be like, if I said, oh, hey, I was a tourist that was coming to England now, and I just peeped how the media and how the culture is, you would only think that there's just black people and white people in this country in terms of how certain culture is being displayed here, right?
mm,
Like, you could probably go down Southall, you maybe could go down to Whitechapel, and you may see that the stations are put in their native language or whatever.
mm,
But it's very, it's like, it seems to be just literally very black and white now.
mm.
You know what I mean? Like, but when you really look at the grand scheme of things, who are the ones in the power positions right now? It's Asians, right? You have Sadiq,
Right.
you have Rishi Sunak, you have Hamza Yusuf of Scotland, then you have what's his face, Sadiq Khan as Mayor of London, right?
Right.
So maybe they just don't really care as much because they're literally probably one of, or if not the most successful demographic in the whole country, right? Asians and Indians and Bangladeshis are probably, or if not the most successful demographic in the country, which is a fact, right? So they may just think, hey, I'm just building stuff anyway. Maybe I don't need for someone else's validation to show me that history when I'm basically top dog. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Doing something tangible. Right.
I'm doing something tangible instead of waiting for the approval of other people to show your history.
Mm.
Know the history yourself,
You're just taking
right?
care of business.
Exactly. Because it's like when, like, even when, like, for example, when Black History Month happens, right? I ain't feeling it. It's not like, oh, I'm excited. It's Black History Month. I'm like, okay.
Mm.
And my birthday is literally on Black History Month, like October 11th, right? And I'm like, I'm more excited about my birthday than Black History Month,
Hey, happy belated, man.
right? And it's just like, yeah, I'm 32, right? And I'm just like, it's whatever. It's like black people need to understand, like, just, it's on, literally on the internet. You could do Black History Month any day.
Every day.
Do you know what I mean? Like, that's why, like, Black History, but it's like my mom's like for example, mom comes up in television. It's like, oh, it's Black History Month. Did you know or not? I already know that, bro.
Oh man, yeah.
I was doing the research.
Man, it points to naivety as well. Like you wait
I
for
mean, like,
October to understand your own history in depth.
I already know my own history. I
Right.
don't need no Black History Month to know my history. Like, there's literally the internet. There's books. I could go on Kindle, get an ebook, bang, have all the information there. I don't need no Black History Month. And even when I was younger, even when I was a lot more younger, where I didn't have that sort of accessibility, I was in the library. I was like, I know what's going on, but I don't really. And to be honest, it's like, you know what Black History Month feels like, right? In
Mm.
terminology, it feels like, all right, black people, you've had your time. It's our time now. Once the month's up after October the 11th, October the 30th. Yeah, let's get back to business now. Black History Month's over, everybody. Let's get
Like
back to
just
business.
shoehorned in. Like, okay, you got
Yeah,
your representation. Now bugger off.
right. Yeah, bugger off. You know what I mean? So it's just like, that's just really what it is, man. Like, that's what it feels like for me, you know. But I could understand the significance of Black History Month maybe 50 years earlier, where black people weren't, let's say, recognized in the war or various things of that nature. I could completely understand. But we're in a time now where all that information is really at our fingertips, you know?
Mm-mm. For real. But hey, Jay, man, I appreciate you coming on, man. I'm really looking forward to your future private endeavors, man. I think that's going to really be well. But feel free
Yeah.
to post your links to your channel in the chat anytime. I really appreciate you coming on. and
No
giving
problem.
us giving your opinions, man. But salute to JM Talks.
Peace.
Salute, peace, man. Peace to JM. Last but not least, Kings and Queens. Any kind of closing final words or messages or any kind of salvation for this topic, if you can?
Yeah, I've been reading the chat, and I don't want to be all doom and gloom. I don't know if I know that, this kind of conversation can lead to that, but for me personally, the way that I kind of see the lack of teaching of Black history in schools and the fact that it may or may not be happening in families. And pretty much everything we've been speaking about, I kind of see our existence as Black people in the UK and Europe as part of a wider Black African existence. Right, that's kind of how I see it. The way that I see the African continent is that the way that I describe it, I describe the African continent as being the seat of our self-respect as Black people. Right. In other words, we're just branches, if you like, or satellites. The reason why I'm saying that is because I'm quite excited, actually, with what's been going on in Francophone countries. Not so much Ghana, because the Ghanaian president thought it was a good idea to sit down and talk to the Americans. But my Ghanaian friends tell me that they want him out. They want to vote him out, right? Because he's not in line with what the people want. So
Right.
I'm saying all of that to say you've got a lot. Those Francophone countries are a young population, right? And the coups that's happened there are different to the ones before because it's a grassroots coup. All of them are, right? They're led by young people. They're led by young people. Now, why is that important? It's important because, you see, they are realizing their self-worth, right? And with kicking out the French and French neo-colonial power, because that's what you've got. You've got control via the back door. By kicking the French out, literally, what they are actually saying is, we want to kick out their curriculum. We want to kick out everything that I know they think and talk in French, but they want everything they want that they can kick out. That is what those young people are going to do. That's what they're going to do. And from the leader who's in his mid-30s, which is awesome in itself, right the way down. And that mentality, right, is not just in the Francophone countries, it's right throughout all of those countries, right? And so, really, our existence in the UK is what it is. There's only a few of us here that I don't believe this is the real fight. That's my personal view. I think the real fight is on that continent. That's where the real fight is, as weird as that sounds. And so what really matters for me is the curriculums and all of those things, the teaching, all of those things that happen in Black majority countries. And I think over the next 15 years, 20 years, we're going to see a lot. The arc of change is quite long, Falcon, and it's not overnight. It's not going to happen tomorrow. And I think a lot of people get disheartened and frustrated by that. But sometimes the arc of change happens over a lifetime. And kind of, that's kind of how we have to view things, And so, as long as they've got a view to turn raw materials into secondary products, that's where the money is, that's where the profit is, that's where the development is, right? And that's been the conversation, and that's why, and that's been the conversation in those countries. And for me, that's linked to you having your curriculums and all the rest of those things. And I know that's not necessarily in the UK, right? But I think the fight. I think if you want to call it a fight, I think the issue is wider than what necessarily is just happening to us in Blighty. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that's my closing thought. Great discussion though.
Hey, well put, Kings and Queens, and it's always a pleasure having you on, man. Are you doing any shows this week? Just to remind people.
Oh yeah, man, I'm going to try and do one tomorrow. I've been putting it off, but I think this particular show, but I'm going to do it tomorrow, and we're going to have a little bit of fun with it. We're going to have a little bit of fun with it. It's going to be relevant, but we're going to have a little bit. We're going to have a little bit of fun with it. We're going to have a little bit of fun.
Make sure you go and check out Kings and Queens, man. Subscribe to Kings and Queens as well. But Kings and Queens, man. Hope to see you soon. I'll be over there tomorrow. See what you're cooking up.
Yeah, man, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a little bit of fun, man. So yeah, come. It's going to be relevant conversation, even to this country. I think it's going to be relevant. So yeah, man, come, man. I look, do come up. If Even we can have a bit of a discussion about it. That'd be fun too.
Hey, for sure. I'll aim to come up. No problem. All right, but
Yeah,
for
man.
now,
All right.
have a good one. Good.
Yeah, you too.
appreciate you coming up.
Take it easy.
Yeah, you
Peace.
too. Peace. Okay, appreciate everyone who came through tonight. I know it was a bit of an ad hoc, random stream, but it was something pressing. I will aim to be more consistent with the streams. Stay tuned. I've got a few things planned, but I don't want to make the mistake of revealing them because, as they say, you're less inclined to reach these these goals. You know what I mean? But I want to give another thanks to everyone who came through with the super chats. We've got Marathon Continues. We got MJA 2873. We got TM. We've got MJA 2873 again, and everyone else who came through in with the live discourse, and JM and Kings and Queens that came up as well. I hope this discussion was fruitful. I hope we gleaned something. I do sincerely believe that a lot of the problems that Black people in Britain face stems from the parents, the family, which is often a negative influence on the mental, on the emotional, and then that relates into the physical. I really do believe that. And I know it's very taboo, it's very controversial. Some of you don't want to admit it, but some of you feel it and know it. You know, and as they say, the first step to overcoming or to pushing forward or to overcoming hardship is to recognize what the problem was, right? What the folly was, you know? But yeah, stay tuned. I might go deeper into those topics as I discussed. But yeah, I appreciate everyone coming through, and I hope everyone has a good night. With that being said, peace.